Hi, and welcome to the Lewiston Tribune Podcast. This is episode number 54. I'm Matt Bainey, managing editor of the Tribune, and I'm joined by Emily Pierce, reporter from the Moscow Pullman Daily News. And Emily has spent time recently in Colfax. And Colfax is the subject of our latest hometown profile written by Emily. Colfax is the seat of Whitman County, and we thought it was appropriate to profile it. And that profile is in the Saturday Tribune and the Saturday Moscow Pullman Daily News. So, Emily, you've been immersed in Colfax recently. And what is it about Colfax that kind of stands out to you in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that would really, in my opinion, is just the historic charm of the town, really. I mean, you look at Pullman and other areas, and there's not as many just artifacts and historic relics littered throughout the town or sprinkled throughout the town, is what I'd probably say better. Yeah, I mean, you have the historic downtown and all of its 19th and early 20th century buildings, and some kind of kooky elements too, like the Codger Pole that has all those football players who in their 70s had that game carved and etched into that statue. And you have the hospital too. It's just, I don't know, it's very stunning.
Yeah. And you write in your story about how Colfax is definitely, you'd call it a farm town, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you look in every direction and there's the rolling Palouse hills. And this time of year, there's still stubble with like yellow. So it's like this endless sea. So yes, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it so of course, yeah, farming is the big game in town. Probably most people who live there are associated with farming in some way. But like you kind of alluded to, there's a lot of other businesses in town. Tell us a little about what the business climate is like in Colfax. What do you see from business there?
Yeah, this is something that also stuck out to me is just how much hustle and bustle there is on Main Street. I mean, I come from a community of 5,000 people that's grown to 7,000, and we have a downtown that had a pie shop in it, but that closed when I was in high school. Compared to Colfax, that is, half of the size of the town that I grew up in. It's I would say its downtown is kind of competing or growing that I could see competing with like Moscow or Pullman. They have so much going on, like antique stores, coffee shops, variety of restaurants. There's just a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah. Um, and it's interesting because it's like you said, it's in your story you mentioned the population there in the latest census was 2,782. Not a huge population, but it is the seat of Whitman County, and there is more businesses than you'd expect from that. So it's probably something that you know might surprise some folks if they don't spend a lot of time there, that there is more going on there than you might expect.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's the impression of people coming down from Spokane or going up there. Just a lot of stuff to do as they cruise through US 195.
Yeah. Uh, you mentioned some of the landmarks. Tell us a little about some of the major landmarks in Colfax.
Oh, well, Colfax is the oldest town in Whitman County, so there's going to be a lot of just stuff everywhere. I think the biggest thing is St.Ignatius Hospital because that has received national attention. It's rumored to have ghosts and ghouls inside that people from all over the world will come and see if they can get a glimpse of. I've been inside of it myself for a different story too, and I didn't see anything, but maybe it's just because I'm a skeptic and they didn't want to come out for me. No, but it's that hospital was Whitman County's primary healthcare provider for a number of years, and even though it's not being used, I still think it's really interesting how sought after it still is. And you also, I mentioned before the Codger Pole, which I think has a really funny story behind, 1930s game didn't go well between Colfax and St. John. 50 years later, these men in their 70s want to hash out a game again, and then you have this I think it's the world's tallest chainsaw artwork that is in Colfax that you can see while you're driving too.
And
But
I
that's another.
let me mention, I looked up a little bit about that game, and it was yeah, as you mentioned, it was the boys from Colfax didn't like how the game went in 1938, so in 1988 they challenged the St. John guys to a game, and they accepted. And they played a game, and I was looking it up in our archives. There were 4,000 people at the game. There were photographers from several different publications, and yes, Colfax claimed revenge. They won 6-0, and it was a touch game, but still, these guys were in their 70s out there playing football, and and then it was a couple years later that the Codger Pole was constructed, and it has the faces of all the players etched in wood, and it's the sort of thing I think. If you don't know it as you're driving by on the highway, if you're not from Colfax, if you're not familiar with it, you might not give it much of a second thought. You might just see, oh, there's some tall thing over there. But I think it's worth a stop to take a look at if you've not seen it before.
I'd say so too. And I mean, another thing that you see driving through town is the concrete river, which I've never seen before. They and there's a reason behind it too. Colfax, being at the confluence of the Palouse River and the South Fork Palouse River, suffered from a lot of the floods throughout its years. And it was finally after I think it was 1948, the people said enough and we need a flood project and reinforced it. And luckily, Colfax has stayed pretty dry since then. I've talked to some locals who said that it's gotten pretty close to overflowing, but luckily, no one's homes have gotten flooded or no one's been displaced. So
It really is unique. I think I've traveling around. I've seen uh, irrigation canals that are concrete, but to actually just have a river that's concrete going through your town is yes, not is an unusual sight to see. So yeah, that is a pretty unique thing in Colfax.
some of the older folk are a little upset about it because I guess that you used to be able to go down to the tire shop that existed back in the day, get some old tires and float the river, come back
Oh,
and do it all over again in the summer. And you can't really do that because it's a little dangerous with the concrete river. So
which and I was just looking it up. You reported in your story the concrete river it's been there a while. It's not like it's new, but yeah, people they they miss the old days where yeah, you could float down. Yeah, so it was built in 1964, but still not accepted totally. Uh, so Emily, what are some standout events that happen in Colfax that might be of interest?
Well, I think the biggest one is the Palouse Empire Fair. It's been around for over a century, and it kind of makes sense why it's such a big deal because it's such a big farming agricultural
Hmm.
town. I talked with the mayor and also some locals too, and they're like, "Well, I know more than less people who have kids who show animals at the Palouse Empire Fair. I mean, it's such a big deal. Sometimes businesses will close down because no one's going to be downtown. Everyone's going to be over at the fair and enjoying the carnival or the rodeo or everything that's happening. So, um, I would also there's another interesting thing with that, which is the plowing or threshing bee, where they take out these historic farming practices, like these horses, and they will like harvest the wheat like they did back in the old days, and that is kind of around a little bit before the Palouse Empire Fair. Another thing I would say is something that I want to check out in the future is the Colfax River Days. It's like a summer festival that has a beer garden, a parade, vendors, and just a day of fun. And it's gone by a few names in the past, like Crazy Days, as well as Summerfest. But I've heard that it's not like what it used to be. I you're not able to close down the highway for that often,
Oh.
just because like it's essential to travel. But they used to have lawnmower races that would zoom down the streets, and someone thought that that was too dangerous, so that doesn't happen anymore.
It's kind of interesting. You mentioned that, Main Street is, yes, also US Highway 195. So really, traveler that plenty of folks have seen this downtown area that we're talking about. I think though that probably a lot of them, Colfax, they're either heading to Spokane or they're heading to Pullman, and there may not be a lot of folks might not stop there, but it really sounds like there's something to see there, that it's kind of worth the stop, huh?
I would say so.
Did you have just personally when you were going around? Did you have any favorite spots that you went into when you were there?
Um, I'm a little bit of a stickler about my coffee, so I wanted to try Fonk's Coffee House, which is very good. I used to be a barista back in the day. But like, I mean, like that also has some historic significance. It was Fonk's variety store that ran for over 70 years before closing in 2000. Was turned into a coffee shop, Fonk's, still in its honor. That was burnt down in 2020. They reopened in 2024, and they had to completely rebuild it, but they still kept the old building's walls that were standing after the fire. Another one that I'd say is Bully for You, specifically because they have a shop mascot. They have a taxidermy giraffe that looks down onto the store, which is kind of fun.
It's an impressive sight. I've seen it too, and yeah, it's real. It's legit. There's yeah, and you can see just how tall those guys are. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's worth seeing. When so you talked to lots of folks. Did anyone, when you were interviewing them, did they say anything about the town that really kind of stood out to you, that kind of summed up Colfax?
I think the general consensus that I got from everyone is just the locals really look out for and take care of one another, which I thought was very wholesome. I didn't write about it, but there's this antique store on Main Street called Thrifty Grandmothers that's ran by thrifty grandmothers. And the store's proceeds, they'll raise thousands of dollars that will go right back into the community. And I just think stuff like that really shows, like, I don't know, the local folk.
Yeah.
I also heard that the golf course will also raise money for people who are sick, or they'll offer their site for like school teams who want to practice. It's just everyone's very generous, is
Yeah.
the impression that I got.
Well, great, Emily. It's was fun to read your story. It's fun to learn about these communities. This is the second one of these profiles we've done. We did one on Grangeville back in March, and I really think, in our area that we cover, we focus most of our attention on Lewiston and Clarkston and Moscow and Pullman. Those are the big population centers. But what I think really makes up our area, what makes it appealing, are these smaller towns. They're so much fun to visit, and the folks that live there are always pretty interesting. So it was anyway. It's fun to do these stories. And did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy getting to know some more of the history of Colfax and just kind of what it was about?
That definitely made me feel more connected to my community. So I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Emily, thanks again. Be sure to check out Emily's story in the Tribune and Daily News on Saturday. And be sure to come back next week for another episode of the Lewiston Tribune Podcast. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.